Hello folks, this is Ogre Owner speaking to you from the inside my kitchen. My last video I taught you how to take apart a monitor, and so today I want to teach you a little bit about how to take care of the coils you get from the monitors that you take apart. In each monitor I found that there are two coils which can be useful in terms of a Bedini motor. The first coil is the big degaussing coil, which takes me about a half an hour to an hour to unwrap, so I don't have time to show you that here. The second coil is a little tiny coil, which I think might be useful in making the trigger coils. So that's what I'm going to take apart here and show you and discuss a little bit about how you take apart coils, why you take them, and why you're careful when you're taking them apart and what to handle. And so right now I'm going to set this camera on a tripod so that you can take a look at my lap as I take apart a coil. Okay, now the camera's on a tripod with you looking here at my lap so I can talk about some of the things you need to do to take apart and clean the coils. First of all, the coils you get are probably going to be pretty dusty, so if you've got good clothes on like I do, you want to put a cloth over your lap to protect your clothing from the dust that's on the coils. Now we're going to discuss how to take apart this coil right here, which is picked at random from one of over the 60 monitors that I've taken apart. Now, when I do this, I need to do something with the coil to hold it together until I get it onto the dewinding jig. And what I've come up with is a thing where I take a roll of electrical tape, pull off a piece of electrical tape, fold it back on itself a couple of times to give me a pull tab, and then I cut that electrical tape and stick it so that when I need it, I have it to wrap around the coil. Because the objective here is to get all the old tape that they put on in either Japan or Taiwan or Korea or wherever it was that these coils were made off of the coil and into the garbage can, and have nothing but these two pieces of brand new electrical tape holding the coil together until it can get onto the dewinding jig. And I'm going to keep these pair of little wire cutters here on my lap, and then also I'm going to have a razor knife on my lap just in case I need it. Now when you go after one of these coils, usually they end the winding here at the end where the wires come out where I cut the wires when I took care of it. So you just start by pulling the wire apart, pulling the electrical tape off, and start unwinding it. I like to unwind going from my right to my left, which is counterclockwise, because I believe that when they were doing things in wherever they made this, they put things on clockwise. I also like to wrap the tape back up so that I have something to grab on as I go. Now you ask yourself maybe why not just use this razor knife and slit this stuff and make it real easy to take off. And I've found as I've unwound coils that sometimes the wire does some crazy stuff inside. One time I had a wire where the wire went halfway around and then looped back, and as I was unwinding the coil and putting it onto a supply spool, I found myself going into some interesting gyrations trying to hold that coil, that extra half a loop of wire, and keep as it went around and wrapped around because I couldn't get it back onto the holder. So slitting the tape and making it so I could just peel the tape off, if I were to do that, I think I would lose about half the coils, because I found more coils where the wire inside the coil does something crazy than I can shake a stick at. And this first piece of tape comes all the way down, and if you look closely now you'll see here where we have some wire, and even though you can't see it, the wire in here does do some crazy things and runs around, so that if I had used a knife on this wire, I probably would have ruined the wire for the purposes of harvesting it for a Bedini coil. So the only way that you can harvest coils is, in my opinion, is by unraveling them like this. And for one of these little coils, this one here will take me about 8 or 9 minutes. as we unwrap it, we noticed a piece of cellophane tape here on the coil that they've used. This happens to be yellow cellophane tape, and I'll show you in just a minute how I take care of that. We're now getting about halfway around the coil, and I expect to find another piece of cellophane tape at the midpoint as we come around. Sometimes as you're unwinding the tape, you'll actually pull that cellophane off. That's a good thing when that happens because it saves you some hassle. When it stays on the coil, that says it's adhered pretty good and you're going to have to take it off yourself. Uh-oh, looks like I've got a defect in the tape here. Okay, there we go. Never quite know what you're going to find as you work around these coils. Sometimes the tape's in good shape, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the tape is really sticky. I hate when I get one of those coils. Well, interesting. Looks like they ran out of tape in the middle of this coil. Okay. There is the new tape. Even this one here has been cut halfway back. Whenever I'm wrapping tape, I like to keep a piece of old tape around to make a handle as I go through, because I find it's easier to wrap if I've got something I can grab hold of than just a little piece of tape. Okay, we're now halfway around and there is another piece of tape there. I like to wrap my holding tape at about the halfway point and back where the wires joined in. So right now, whilst I'm thinking about it, let me grab one of my pieces of tape that I cut, put it just to the side of their tape, and wrap it around. You may ask yourself, why do I go to this bother when I'm going to have to take this thing off anyway? When I put the wire onto the dewinding jig, now what I'm doing here is I'm sliding the jaw of my wire cutters up underneath the tape, making sure that I don't have any of the wire caught between the jaw of and the tape. And that then makes this tape peel off, and this tape can now just go in the garbage can. I always keep a garbage can right there handy so that I can drop things in it. And since I'm doing this, I'll go back and get that first piece of tape that we encountered. Clip it, and then once you've clipped that first little bit, usually the wire cutters will just cut it. Alrighty, so now there's those two pieces of tape off, and we're ready to continue unwinding. I like to unwind it counterclockwise with my left hand holding the coil and my right hand on the copper that's being exposed. That way I can sort of keep the coil together as I come around. Now this piece of tape that I'm currently working with is a continuous piece of tape, except when they run out of tape and have to put a new one on. But it will go completely around the coil and probably terminate. Oh boy, this guy's got some issues with his tape. My nails won't get me. I use my wire cutters as priers to help me. And if need be, use that knife to pry up under this tape. This one here, whoever did it had a real hard time with their tape. Most of them aren't nearly this difficult. This tape has had a couple of places where the tape has been cut halfway through, and as I'm unwinding it, it doesn't come off. Oh well, there's another piece of that yellow cellophane tape. Unwind a little bit past it. In fact, I'll wait to cut it until after I'm done here. is the big ball of tape. Come back here, get this little yellow one. Being very careful not to get wire underneath here because there's some wire near the surface that's running sort of serpentine, and I don't want to cut it. The objective here is to harvest the wire in such a way that the insulation is intact, not nicked, and is beautiful. Okay, now we come to the part that was the first part they put on, and usually I find that the end that we want to work with is back here, and it is in this one as well. Get my fingernail underneath it, perhaps. So now I've actually turned the coil around because this tape, there we go. Now this tape is going to go back and is going to take in, boy, you see the coil coming apart because I didn't have my hand down there. This tape is going to go all the way back to the point where the two ends of the wire enter the coil. And as I unwrap it, I'm also unwrapping the end of the wire, where the wires made the connection to the magnet wire in the coil. And so this will be a time now where I can put into action the other piece of tape that I prepared. The wires here come off and go this way. So I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to put this tape on here in such a way that I preserve those wires. I find when I'm putting the wires on the jig, if I place it so that the wires are coming off the coil to my right, it makes it easier to find the wire that's laying around the top of the top versus the wire that was starting on the bottom of the coil. And then here I have to be very careful as I cut off this piece of wire, because usually there's a piece of wire that goes backwards and comes back through and is held in place by this wire, by this tape. Alrighty, there now I have a coil that's ready to go on to my dewinding jig and be put onto a supply spool. This is Ogre Owner signing off at about 13 minutes. Thank you, bye.